Sunday School teacher, I'm glad that you have joined us for our time of study and preparation. Doing something a little bit different for this Sunday. In our curriculum, we are observing what we call the Sanctity of Human Life Sunday. Back, 25 years ago, at least, maybe even further than that, the Southern Baptist Convention said that one of the things that is required of Lifeway Christian Resources is that on this Sunday, it is to write curriculum material, Bible study materials to observe the Sanctity of Life Day, Sanctity of Human Life Day. And so that's what this is, and so that's the study for January the 20th. We are going to begin in Genesis, but we're going to go Genesis 1, Genesis 9, and then Matthew 5 as we talk about this Bible study session entitled Protect and Serve. Again, Genesis 1, Genesis 9, and Matthew chapter 5 is where we're going to be. This idea of sanctity of human life. Many times when we hear, we're having Sanctity of Life Day, most of the time the first thing that we're drawn to, and because it's the one that's in the news media, is the issue of abortion. But what we need to understand is that this idea, this principle, this doctrine of the sanctity of human life goes from the womb to the grave. It's not just about the issue of abortion, but it's about the sanctity of human life. Every human being is of incredible value to our Creator God. To God, He cares about every human life. As followers of Christ, we need to continually remind ourselves that God created all human life, that He is the author of all human life. And because we bear God's image, it makes every person valuable and worthy of respect. And so that's what we're talking about today, protect and serve. Let's look at these verses. First of all, chapter 1 in Genesis, we're going to look at verse number 27. 1:27, if I can get there. He says, so God created man in His own image, and He created him in the image of God. He created them, male and female. So this verse is about being in His image. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 records that God created everything and that everything exists because of God, that He created the heavens and the earth and everything that is, He made. In verse 27, we see that God is the source of life for humans. The term that God created man, the word man there is the man, Adam, that God created Adam, and he was the one that all others came from. In other words, he's the daddy, great-granddaddy, great-great-great-granddaddy of all human beings. What does the image of God mean? First of all, we need to understand that it does not mean that humans can attain some type of godship, that human beings are not gods. We are not little gods. It's not saying that we are equal to God. But when it says that we were created in His image, it says that humans have intellect. We have the power to reason. Humans possess and exhibit emotions because we are made in His image. Humans have the power and the freedom to make choices. Humans exercise dominion over the earth. And then finally, humans are spiritual beings. So when you think about when it says that we are made in His image, that's what it's talking about, not that we are gods. It also says in verse 27 that He created them male and female. God created the aspect of gender in human beings, with each having a different function. He created male and female. That's it. That's the two. That's it. You're either a guy or you're a girl. You're either a man or a woman. You're either male or a female. And each gender has a different function. Is one more important than the other? No. It's just that each is different. So we're created in His image. Well, let's look at chapter 9, verses 1 through 7, and there we'll see to be protected. God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear and terror of you will be in every living creature on earth, every bird of the sky, every creature that crawls on the ground, and every fish of the sea. They are placed under your authority. Every creature that lives and moves will be food for you, as I gave the green plants. I have given you everything. However, you must not eat meat with its life blood in it. I will require a penalty for your lifeblood. I will require it from any animal and from any human. If someone murders a fellow human, I will require that person's life. Whoever sheds human blood by humans, his blood will be shed. For God made humans in His image. But you, be fruitful and multiply, spread out over the earth and multiply on it." Then God said to Noah and his sons with him, "Understand that I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you." Here we see that we are to protect. We have the story of Noah and the flood. After the waters of the flood had receded from the earth following the great flood, God spoke to Noah and told him to leave the ark, that it was time to go. God blessed Noah's family and told him that his purposes had not changed. In verse 1, he lets them know that his purpose has not changed. In verse 2, we see that the peaceful harmony that existed between humans and other living creatures before the fall was now gone. And it says there in verse 2 that the fear and terror of you will be every living creature. I mean, that's why we have a difficulty with wild animals. They live in fear of us. Verse 3, God has graciously provided everything we need for surviving and thriving as His people. And then in verse 4, Noah and his descendants could now add meat to their formerly vegetarian diet. But they were not to eat like the other animals. Verse 4 says, "However, you must not eat meat with its life blood in it." In other words, the lion will go out and kill his prey and sit there and eat it. God said you're not supposed to eat like animals. You're not to be like animals. You're not supposed to live like animals. Verse 5, God's covenant with Noah included His command to protect human life by requiring the life of any creature that took a human life illegitimately. If they murdered someone, they were also to die. In verse 6, we are the stewards of God's creation and exercise responsibility for the earth, which demands that we value and protect human life. Verse 6, whoever sheds human blood by humans, his blood will be shed. We are His stewards. And then also we are to value human life and to enjoy being part of God's purposes on earth. Well, let's go over to the New Testament, to Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 and 22. And there we read, "You have heard that it was said to your ancestors, 'Do not murder. For whoever murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you, everyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Whoever insults his brother or sister will be subject to the court. Whoever says, 'You fool,' will be subject to hellfire." This is Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Jesus challenged his hearer to reflect on some familiar scriptural teachings that they had heard all of their life. To his listeners, they were no doubt well versed in the law, particularly to the 10 Commandments. And that's what he says in verse 21 when he says, "You have heard it said from your ancestors," where you've heard this since you were a child. What he mentions in 21 is anyone who commits murder. Whoever murders will be subject to judgment. Now that statement was not in the original commandment. The commandment was, "Thou shalt not kill." Later on, they added the penalty for murder, which was death. Jesus provided 3 applications of the commandment, giving examples of sinful attitudes and actions that deeply damage people and have serious consequences. And that's what we see in verse 22. The first one that he mentions is anger. Anger is determining to bring harm to someone else. Jesus said, not only should you not murder someone, not only should you not end someone's life, but he also says you're not supposed to be angry. You are not supposed to you're not supposed to make a decision to hurt someone. You can't be angry. And then he also talks about insults. And the word that is used there is, the word is working to do harm to someone's reputation. It's not just saying things about them, but doing things that will hurt them. And then another term he uses is the term fool. This is saying that somebody's crazy, that they've lost their mind, and that they have nothing to offer, and they're of no value to anyone. Their life is worthless. God expects His children to demonstrate that they value others by showing respect to all people, even if they are not like you or me. God created humanity in His image, and when He did so, He ascribed to human life a sacred value. And so we are to serve and protect. There in your outline, I've given you the summary points for each one of those 3 scripture sections that we've looked at. Number 1 is that true transformation leads believers to value and seek God's blessing above all else. When we submit to God, transformation occurs, and believers can establish those important decisions in their life. Now, think about the question, what does it mean to be pro-life? What does it mean to be pro-life? And then, in closing, how has God transformed your life? Share with the group at least one way in which God brought visible change through your journey and the life that God has blessed you with. So again, we're talking about protect and serve. Got several passages of Scripture that we're talking about. It is the Sanctity of Human Life Sunday, and the point of the lesson is that God created humanity in His image, giving human life a sacred value. Well, I'll be praying for you as you teach this coming Sunday. God bless you.